It's late. Hearts have been broken, and we are here to talk about the Bengals' latest foray in the AFC Championship game. And this time, I am not alone. You probably know this guy from some of the stuff that he has done on Cincy Jungle recently, but this guy was one of the main guys who got me into Cincy Jungle, God, I don't know, 13 years ago or so. Jason Garrison joining me. He's going to be doing some stuff with us, not only on cincyjungle.com, but maybe helping us out with some producing things and videos and, helping us out with a lot of different stuff. And Jason, happy to have you on. I wish it was a little bit more of a joyous occasion, my friend, but at least I won't be flying solo tonight. Misery loves company. And how you doing, man?
Good. Well, no, I'm not good. I was good before the game.
That's your first line on this show.
Yeah.
Good. Well, I'm not good, but yeah.
I appreciate you having me. I'm excited. It was very frustrating to see them, lose by 3 points on the road, especially the way that they lost. A penalty kind of deciding everything. You never want the official to be you never want an official to decide the game, and that's basically what happened. I don't think that particular penalty was a bad penalty, but there were some though, for sure.
We're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay. We usually, as we usually do, we're going to go through the box score and look at trends and stats and all that kind of thing. And, kind of the tail of the tape. We'll give our takes on some of the stuff. We've got more shows this week that we'll do that as well. But I know it's late for a lot of folks. We've already got, quite a few live viewers already, even though it's midnight Eastern.
Yeah.
So it's late, but we appreciate it. And I at this point, quite honestly, having the people that we have, I'm sure a lot of people are like, I'm turning it off. I've already seen a lot of people saying they're not going to watch the Super Bowl and a lot of different things about that, but it is what it is. And look, let's just start with what, and we're going to have silver lining stuff. I promise. This isn't just going to be, this isn't just going to be, blast this person or blast, whatever. Here's the thing. Okay. I'm not the guy that likes to say they lost the game because of the refs. And I still don't think that is an applicable statement here with what I saw. What I don't know if enraged is the right word, but what I'm very, very irritated about in this one, Jason, is that I found you never want an AFC championship game to have a major talking point be in the officiating, be in the refereeing. And I know a lot of people will look at this and they'll look from the outside and they'll go, oh, the Bengals guys, of course, are talking about the officiating. And, oh, what about these missed calls against the Chiefs? And I understand that, but this is a major talking point. This is tied for the second largest game in an NFL season, the second most important game in the NFL season. And to have the officials have such a large thumbprint on this, that's what bothers me. And I'm talking, trust me, I've got a play-by-play thing where I'm going to show you some things at the end in these last two drives where you go, wow, that's weird. And I'm namely talking about, you look at the what do you call it? The intentional grounding, right? Where P. Ryan was in the area. And then, of course, you've got a couple of no calls on the following drive where you go, what happened? And then, of course, Joseph Osai. Now, to me, Joseph Osai, you can say maybe that was a little ticky-tack, whatever. That's going to get called, especially against Patrick Mahomes, every time.
Every time. Yep. Anytime.
And I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. My problem with it is just that I don't like that in this high profile of a game that one of the major talking points, and not just from Bengals fans, I'm talking about I'm seeing it on Twitter. I'm seeing it in a lot of places.
It's trending on Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's like, again, I don't want to say refs cost the Bengals the game, but there were impactful moments in this game by the officiating crew. Then there's really not another way around it.
No, absolutely. It is trending on Twitter. The NFL is rigged. I don't necessarily believe that's the case. There were a couple missed calls. There were, like you said, with the P. Ryan being in the area on intentional grounding. There were a couple calls that I thought were questionable. There was, I don't know if it was the Bengals' last offensive drive, but Burrow had thrown a pass and then just got pushed down on the ground a good second after he threw the pass. And it would have been a ticky-tack foul had it been called, but it could have been called. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I want you to continue, but I'm just going to say this on that play. I didn't see that till later, but I think it was the defender had about 3 or 4 steps and just kind of gave him a light shove, right?
And it was, right.
So, but those were the borderline calls that seemed to be going the other way, as opposed to not going the Bengals way. And so that's where I kind of go, hey, if you're gonna push the envelope on some of these calls, make it be for both teams.
Right.
So that I didn't mean to cut you off, but that play right there kind of encapsulates a little bit of my gripe with that.
Right. So yeah, you have to call those plays, call those fouls on both teams, or you don't call them for both teams. One of the two. Let them play or call them. So he, Burrow didn't get that, and you saw him. He jumped up and he was looking at the ref, yelling at the ref. Where's the flag? But you're right. Anytime that Patrick Mahomes has got his foot on the white and someone touches him, there's going to be a flag. That's just the way it is. He's Patrick Mahomes. He's the face of the NFL right now. That's not to say that he didn't play amazing tonight, because he did.
He did. He played very, very well.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Considering he's got 1.5 legs right now, but he was limping around. We saw that after he kind of threw off balance running to the left. So what he did tonight was amazing. He put the team on his back. He played great. I don't want to take that away from him. And the Bengals had some opportunities to do some things that they just didn't make the plays they needed to. But yeah, I hate the idea that a game of this magnitude, and you're right, it's the second most important game of the season after the Super Bowl, a game of this magnitude being decided potentially by a flag, which I don't like at all. So
yeah,
it's frustrating.
I see Luden. I think it's Luden here, and I hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly here.
Yeah.
What about the holding call that wasn't called on Trey on the play that got the extra 15 to win the game? Yeah, that was there were 2 potential holding calls in the same play that I saw that were not called. There was the intentional grounding call that was called against Burrow in the previous drive. Now, granted, the Bengals were amazingly able to overcome that with that great play to Hurst. But still, that puts you in a big hole, right? I mean, and these are the types of things there. And then there was a block in the back on the punt return that you're like, hey, that wasn't called. And there's all these things, and you go, really shoulda, woulda, coulda. Because Jason, here's the deal, man. We can complain about the officiating. We can complain about all of this. And I'm sure we're going to get Chiefs fans in here, and they're going to just see this little thing at the bottom there. And they're going to see us talking about this. And of course they're calling, No, the bottom line is the Bengals held Patrick Mahomes for the better part of the almost 4 entire quarters on his home field to 20 points.
Right.
I mean, granted, they won 23-20.
Right.
But you hold Patrick Mahomes to 20 points on his home field as a defense, and you have Joe Burrow on the other sideline, you kind of feel like that's a game that you got in your pocket. And so the Cincinnati Bengals, Burrow threw 2 interceptions. You can kind of say, well, I mean, one was almost a punt in the T. Higgins one. That kind of equated to that. But you look at some of the things, it was not a great day on offense, and really, quite honestly, the best thing that they had going for him on offense today was Tyler Boyd early, and Boyd left the game with an injury. Boyd was kind of the guy that was moving the chains and extending drives early. Chase made a couple of nice plays, especially on that 4th down, which was insane. Higgins had that Randy Moss play, but I mean, it was just kind of the consistency on offense wasn't there that we have seen against Buffalo, that we've seen against all these other teams in this, what was a 10-game winning streak or 11-game winning streak, whatever it was. The consistency was not there. It was like, we got to hope, we got to do a wing and a prayer type of play to get points, to extend drives, that sort of thing. And the running game wasn't there. Just not a lot of consistency on offense. It starts with the offensive line for sure.
Absolutely. So I think for the first time since we lost 3 starters, we didn't really see it catch up to us in Buffalo. They played, the whole offensive line played great. Everything was great in Buffalo. But having 3 starting offensive linemen out just killed them today. Chris Jones was a monster today. And we also need to remember that the only team that had more sacks this season than the Kansas City Chiefs was the Philadelphia Eagles, which they had 70, which is insane. But the Chiefs had 55. They've been good at rushing the passer all season long, and they haven't been able – and they were just – they just kind of ate the Bengals offensive line up today. I mean, all over the place. Chris Jones was everywhere. I know I was kind of surprised to learn today before the game started that he had actually not had a postseason sack in his entire career. until today.
That's crazy.
I know.
Yeah, that surprised me. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, he's a beast. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, just having, and it wasn't just pass blocking. Mixon averaged 2.4 yards per carry. On P Ryan was better, 4.4 yards per carry for P Ryan. But the running game wasn't there. Yeah, it was frustrating. But the offensive line having, so we lost you lost left tackle and right guard and right tackle. And I mean, when you have a team that can rush the passer when you're playing backups, it's recipe for disaster.
It is, and kudos to the Chiefs because at the end of the game there, his sack that Jones had,
Mhm.
they saw a mismatch off the edge, and they said, "Hey, instead of playing him on the interior where he dominates, they said, hey, we're gonna kind of, I think it was a 3-man front at the time. I have to go back and look, but it is, I think, a 3-man front. And they're like, hey, you're going to go up against a Denji here, back up right tackle, not against Karras, or Volson or what have you, kind of the starters that are inside. You're going to go up against a backup right tackle, and we're going to try and get a mismatch there."
Right.
And they exploited it.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
kudos to them. And I'm already seeing a little bit of chatter in our live chats, and that's okay. That's from some Chiefs fans, and that's
Yeah,
fine. But the bottom line is this is becoming a marquee matchup.
it is.
And when you look at the last these 4 games, we're talking 2 AFC championship games, and we're
Yep.
talking 2 very high profile regular season games, Jason. And each game 3 points,
Oh, I
and
know. Everyone.
late last drive,
Yep.
right? We're not talking runaway, runaway. It's last drive, either bleed the clock out or last field goal, and that's what it is, or overtime, right? I mean, so if either fan base wants to really run their mouth, it's like, hey, this is a really close rivalry. These are 2 really good teams, 2 really good quarterbacks, and it's a 1 possession game every single time.
Absolutely. And this is one of those matchups that you see Thursday night football, first game of the season.
Yeah,
You want the
yeah.
Bengals and the Chiefs out there because they haven't failed to have an entertaining game all season long. Another thing, just back to the offensive line real quick, to adjust for the fact that I mean, the first half was bad, but to adjust for that, they had to bring their tight ends back into the backfield. They had to leave a running back in the backfield. So they're missing a lot of Hayden Hurst out. He had some big plays, but they're missing him in routes. They doubled Chase and Higgins, and they just said, you got to beat us with your backup wide receiver because Boyd's out. It was a tough situation that they were in. But absolutely, I do think that this is a maybe one of our first non-divisional rivalries. And I could absolutely see this being Thursday Night Football game number 1 to open the season. So we'll see.
Yeah. Or yeah. I mean, I don't know if I want it there based
No,
on the lack of
no,
success on Sunday night, but I mean, I you could see Sunday night Chris Collinsworth calling these games, and
yeah,
boy, Chris, he's only seen about, I think, 1 win ever by the
yeah,
Bengals on Sunday Night Football since it came back to NBC. But
right.
regardless, man, I mean, I'm seeing some stuff about Travis Kelce. To be quite honest, I just kind of, after the thing, I'm like, I'm not watching the trophy
Right. Yeah, I'm not. I'm
crap.
not going to watch it either.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm not. I saw some clips and whatever, and he said some things, and quite honestly, it's one of those things where you roll your eyes a little bit, but you kind of say, well, I mean, it's if you're the Bengals, you did run your mouth a little bit, right?
Right.
Whether it's the team itself, whether it's the mayor, whether it's whomever, you ran your mouth, and if you didn't get the win, you were going to get it back, right? So I
Right.
mean, you can hate on Travis Kelce, by the way, a local guy, a UC
Right.
guy, right?
Sure.
So
Yep.
I mean, you can hate on him for the public comments and the riling up the Chiefs fans, during the trophy ceremony and all this kind of stuff, and that's fine. But if you're going to put yourself that far out there, if you're the Bengals, people associated with the city, the team, etc., I mean, you don't come through with the win, you're gonna get that back. That's just kind of the reality of it.
That's just how any sports works. You run your mouth a little bit, and that's fine. No one's hurting anybody. But yeah, you knew that if the Chiefs won, we were going to get it back, and we're going to have to eat crow and get ready for next year. That's the only thing that we can do. I saw a little bit of Joe Burrow's press conference. I don't know if you were able to catch it, but he basically just said that it's time, get your minds and body right, improve the team, and get ready for next year. But he said that he absolutely expects to see the Chiefs again in the AFC Championship because he knows who their quarterback is and that they're coached by Andy Reid, who's one of the all-time great offensive coaches in NFL history.
It's funny because earlier today, before this game kicked off or anything, I just happened to look up. I'm like, not I don't want to assert anybody to certain levels or whatever, but I looked at what's the history of Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, and I kind of just off the top of my mind, granted because I didn't cover those teams closely
Right.
or what have you, I just kind of felt like, oh well, given that it felt like Manning was a guy who went to the postseason a lot, and when he ran into Brady, it was like, oh, it's done, and in the regular season, it just felt like Brady had it, and Brady had an advantage in terms of overall record, but there were more wins than I had thought with Manning, the Brady Manning thing, and
Yeah.
so that just was one of those iconic deals, and maybe that's just what we have here. But the bottom line is, here we are again, though, Jason. And I know we're only now going to be entering year 4, and we can talk about this throughout the week too. But
Sure.
we're only going to be entering year 4 of the Joe Burrow era. But here we go. Now he says the championship window is his entire career. I believe him. I think the Bengals are going to extend him this year and pay him just back up the Brinks truck for him. But
Yep.
I mean, here we go. Now you're talking about 2 years. I know we're kind of getting a little spoiled now based on previous history, but you just kind of felt like how the Bengals were playing, the chip on the shoulder this year, what they overcame, what they were able to overcome in terms of injuries. All you just kind of felt like this was maybe the year, very, very good year, one you can really hang your hat on, but still come up short.
Yeah. It's a rough ending after I think 10 games, right? 10 games winning streak.
Yeah.
And which is it's so improbable in general anyway to win 10 games in a row. And a lot of things have to go your way. A lot of balls have to bounce your way to win 10 games in a row. But you're right. On that winning streak, and then Patrick Mahomes comes in with a bum ankle, and then you had you heard about Travis Kelce, and he's a game time decision. You really don't know how they're going to play. They both looked great. So you think this is the year, this is it. Maybe we'll get the Niners, third time's a charm.
Yeah.
Obviously that wasn't even close to happening, but
I don't mean to cut you off too. I feel bad for the 49ers because I felt like they didn't even get a fair shake today.
No,
really.
I don't think so either. Yeah.
With the injuries, it just felt like it was like, they kind of got cheated out of their own deal. But anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. But I do think that this is what we can expect. And I said something before we went live. I said, I do want to remind everybody that, we had first of all, we had the lost decade of the 90s, which was, if you survived that, you can survive this. So you'll be fine. Then you had, then you had Carson Palmer come in, and it's the terrible injury to his knee on a home playoff game. And you think maybe if he doesn't get hurt, they win the Super Bowl. And then you have Andy Dalton come in, and we lose 5 straight first-round playoff games, 5 years consecutively. It's never going to happen. And then Joe Burrow comes in, we go to the Super Bowl, lose by 3. We go to the next AFC Championship, lose by 3. So things are really good. I'm not saying that, this is a tough loss to swallow. But this is the new standard. This is what we can get used to, and I think that we will win one. I do truly believe that. I think that Joe Burrow will take us where we need to go.
I think multiple are probably in the future there.
That'd be great.
It's hard right now though, because and I'm sure this is going to be the offseason talking point here, because I think where you felt like this was kind of the year, there are a lot of free agents and that are coming up this offseason, next offseason, guys coming out of rookie contracts and whatever. So you kind of felt like, man, this is where you capitalize, and then you maybe kind of add pieces here and there. But the bottom line is, and this is how I feel about it, is when you have your head coach and you have your quarterback, you're always in it.
Yeah.
The Bengals have those. And when you do not, the have-nots are the ones who are clearly, not in it every year. So there are some things that the Bengals need to do in terms of, tweaking their roster and finding different things to improve their roster. Obviously, I mean, last week we're sitting here singing the praises of 3 backup offensive linemen against the Buffalo Bills and the way that they played and manhandled the Bills defensive line and linebackers in that game. And then, this week it's like, wow, you go up against a bigger, better Chiefs defensive front, and the weaknesses were exploited. And so I don't know what you do, because quite honestly, the Bengals got 4 new starters on their offensive line. They were like, this is our biggest weakness of our football team. We're going to do whatever we can to fix that. They did. And unfortunately, they just got injured.
Yep.
And you go, man, if only they had gotten past this game, you probably would have had one, if not two of those guys back for the Super Bowl, given the 2-week rest.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. You think, especially, I know I saw Kappa walking around. There were kind of some talks that maybe he would be ready to go for this game, and obviously he wasn't. But you think that maybe Kappa and possibly Williams come back for this game or for the Super Bowl if they get past this game. I really thought when Burrow had the ball tie game with 2 minutes left, I was like, well, this is it. This is what, this is how he kind of seals his legend status. But it didn't work out that way. I do think the offseason, I think they, on top of getting healthy, I still think they need to tweak the offensive line a little bit.
Just depth, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean,
depth,
it's like
a lot of depth. And then, obviously they're going to have to pay Burrow, but like you mentioned, they're the haves and the haves not. Kansas City backed 20 Brinks trucks up for Patrick Mahomes and paid him $1 trillion. But, they're going to the Super Bowl. So I don't think paying Joe Burrow what he deserves to be paid is going to kill any chances of them bringing the right guys in. They just have to find the right guys, and they've done that over the last few years. They brought in Reader, they traded for BJ Hill, one of the greatest trades in Bengals history. Losing Price for Hill was unbelievable. I still have a hard time believing that happened.
Yeah.
They drafted guys like Joseph Asai, and I don't remember what round he was drafted in, but I know it wasn't the first. Yeah, third round. There you go. So they've done the right thing over the last couple off seasons. They've opened up their wallets, and I expect them to do that again. They're right there, and just a little bit more to get over the hill.
Yeah, it's just they've got some big decisions to make this offseason in terms of who to keep, who not to keep. And, you just kind of felt like, man, especially this mission they were supposedly on, given what happened last year, and that they just were not, thought of. They still were kind of the underdog. And then here we go this week. And, again, hats off to the Chiefs, because I'm going to tell you this before we get into some of these, and it'll probably indicate some of this in the box score. I haven't really combed through it deeply, but I mean, you saw early, Jason, when the Chiefs made a big play on offense, when they made a big play on defense, they had that passion, right? I mean, it was like they wanted this game. Now, I don't want to say they wanted it more than the Bengals. I don't want to say that, like that's whatever, but the Chiefs wanted this win. They listened to the noise. I think the Bengals listened to the noise as well. And, one team just kind of did maybe one or two things better than the Bengals did. And it really did come down to, not great execution on offense by the Cincinnati Bengals, some wonky stuff with the officiating, and then the Chiefs just playing with a high level of passion as well in this game that kind of put them over the edge.
Right. The Bengals have kind of played with that chip on their shoulder, and that's been their calling card throughout the entire entire postseason. With the Ravens coming in, they won that game, but then they gave them no shot against the Bills, and they came up there and just absolutely dismantled them in Buffalo. And then things kind of turned. I know that the Chiefs, I think the closing, the line, the last was, I think the Chiefs by 1, I think. But the Bengals were favored for a little while, and then a lot of people picked the Bengals, and there was a lot of the mayor thing. And I think the Chiefs kind of came in with a little chip on their shoulder this time. But I do want to say this. It's the AFC Championship game, and these guys are all professional athletes. If they needed something to play for, they probably shouldn't be in the NFL. I don't, I'm not going to really buy into the Bengals ran their mouths and the Chiefs, that's why the Chiefs won. That's not why the Chiefs won. That's, they were ready to play. They're going to be ready to play no matter what. These guys are pros. They know what they're doing. You mentioned something wonky with the officiating. The third down thing. The do-over on third down was the worst, the wonkiest thing ever. And I know they said there was a whistle blown, and you saw, when they replayed the official running onto the field. And that ended up not costing them because they still stopped him on third down, and then
Ball didn't lie, right?
no, but still, oh my gosh, that was one of those things I was pacing back and forth. Yeah, I
You know,
wasn't happy about that.
I don't like to be the guy who points out one, specific officiating crew or what have you, but there's a little bit of smoke and fire with the Ron Torbert crew. I mean, really, there's a lot of inconsistent officiating in the history there, and it's not so much them, because it really comes down to the league, and it always goes back to the argument of, hey man, the league's got to hire full-time
Right.
full-time
Yeah.
officials and all this kind of stuff, and they just haven't done it. So I mean, that's just kind of part of the deal.
Yeah.
Again, I this isn't the loss is not on the officials. I never blame, unless there's a blatant, touchdown that was,
Right.
Points literally taken off the board. But there was stuff where you just kind of say there was an impact felt, and there was officiating decisions that did impact potential drives and things of that nature. But the bottom line is, again, I just keep saying it. Bengals hold Mahomes to essentially 20 points until the very end of the game there.
Yeah.
You hold Mahomes to 20 points on his home field in the
Yeah.
playoffs. Like you kind of feel like you should win that game, right? I mean, it just kind of feels that way. I had the wrong box score pulled up. I thought I had the right one. So this is why I need you, buddy. You get to correct. This is exactly why. But no, let's pull this up here. This, I believe, is the correct one here. And you look at it, an imperfect game from Joe Burrow, including 2 picks, which was uncharacteristic of him in this win streak. Really, the only interceptions or turnovers he was creating was against AFC North teams, right? I mean, the AFC North teams were the ones that kind of had some were used to him a bit, and he played essentially perfect football against the Kansas City Chiefs when he played them. Not so much the case here. You see 5 sacks, 2 interceptions. Now, that's not to say Joe Burrow didn't play a good game, because there were a lot of throws in this game where you go, wow. And a lot of people are saying, I'm seeing some Burrow slander a little bit on some of the social media sites and whatnot. I mean, man, when you're telling him go convert a 3rd and 16 or 3rd and 17 at the end with less than 2 minutes in Arrowhead. I mean, come on. I mean, and he throws a dime to the outside, and there was a throw to Hurst in the end zone early in the game that I think they ended up settling for a field goal. Tough ball. Put it where only he could get it. It was dropped or just not completed. So, I mean, overall, I don't think Joe Burrow is necessarily to blame for this loss. I still would kind of say, imperfect game by him. Offensive line and other issues played a part in that, but you just can't throw 2 interceptions and have Mahomes not throw any in Arrowhead in the AFC Championship game.
Right. The only turnover that Mahomes had was that kind of weird fumble that I guess it just slipped out of his hands.
Yeah.
I kind of hesitate to call that a dropped pass by Hurst, because it would have been a great catch. I wish he would have caught it. Obviously, wish he would have caught it.
Right.
There was also that play that hit Jamar Chase in the face right off his helmet. There were a lot of perfect throws. The bottom line, though, is that Joe Burrow is in the conversation with Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, whoever else you want to say are the best quarterbacks in the league right now. But we're seeing this comment. Joe Burrow was hurried and couldn't put enough arc on the ball. Sure, absolutely. He was hurried all game long. He was forced to throw the ball earlier than he wanted to. But yeah, it's he's in the conversation. He's this we want to talk about the Brady and the Brady Manning rivalry. This is probably it. This is probably it. So we're 3-1. They'll play again next year. I don't remember if they're in Arrowhead or in Cincinnati. I think they're in Arrowhead again next year. I think.
Yeah, I'll have to double check on that. But here's what's interesting to me, Jason, is usually you would say we're going to go all out on Mahomes, and the Bengals did that to some degree this time. But we're going to go all out on Patrick Mahomes, and we're going to let them kind of get us by the run if they're able to. Right. Mm-hmm. We're not going to let Pat do all his backyard football type of play. And if you want to run the ball on us, that's fine. But this week, I think the game plan was a little different in some ways. Of course, Mahomes is going to be Mahomes, but I think they were like, hey, he's hurt. Like he's not as mobile. He's not going to do as many things with his legs. And you saw he didn't really. He had the one run at the end of the game there, obviously, and he got hit out of bounds with it. But it was not the dance around a ton of ad lib, run all around the park because he just couldn't. Right. So the Bengals, if you look here where my cursor is, 20 carries for 42 yards as a team.
Yeah.
For the Kansas City Chiefs and 2.1 yards per carry. They kind of said, we're going to clamp down on the run and then we're going to do what we can in the past. We're going to let Patrick Mahomes, maybe make a turnover or two here. And Mahomes played exceptional. He really did on a bad ankle. And so, you look at the Bengals there, 4.2 yards per carry, but I found this stat down here, 2.1 yards per carry and only 42 yards on the ground by the Chiefs. Very, very interesting in this one with Mahomes throwing for 326.
And I think that's a pretty good game plan considering Mahomes' his injury in general, not being as mobile, because he creates so well in the backfield, just like Joe Burrow does. When he gets out of the pocket, he can do some crazy things. He made some insane throws. They weren't all complete, but he made some insane throws as he was falling down today. What he can do with his arm is unbelievable. So I like the idea of taking the run game away. I just think Mahomes just had an incredible game, and that's what that's what he does. So the offense has to play better, basically. So the defense did their job.
Valdez-Scantling, they didn't have really a good answer for him. He made big play after big play, 6 for 116 and a touchdown. Kelsey got 7 for 78 and a touchdown. I mean, he made his plays. He had that one, kind of killer play in the end zone for a touchdown, but wasn't a gigantic game from him. But still, I mean, he got his. Higgins and Chase each had 6 catches. I mean, not the monster game from the Bengals wide receivers, the only touchdown being to Higgins from Burrow, 6 for 83 and a touchdown from him. A great play by Higgins on that one. And you look around, I mean, the Bengals, they had 3 sacks on Mahomes. One was from Sample, one was from Hubbard, one was looking for the other one there. I don't know who had the other sack there, but
Mike Hilton. There you go.
Yeah, it's yeah. There you go. And then you look here, 5 sacks and 12. I think it's 12 quarterback hits here from the Kansas City Chiefs, and 12 quarterback hits. You look at it though. I mean, Chris Jones had 2. Frank Clark had. When you have 3.5 between Chris Jones and Frank Clark, it's a bad day. I mean, those are the 2 guys. If one guy kind of has a good game and the other doesn't or whatever, I mean, but both of them having those numbers, you simply cannot have that because those are 2 very good football players on their defensive line. You just can't have them combining for 3.5 sacks. It's just not a formula for success.
And that's again, that comes back to the injuries on the offensive line and then having to bring 2 potential receivers that could open things up for you, keep them in the backfield where, they're not able to run routes. And then, the Kansas City Chiefs, they double Higgins, they double Chase, and they have to leave Hurst in sometimes, or they have to leave Pirine in when they could have gone out and, caught passes, gain first down. So I think a lot of this game comes down to, again, just the injuries on the offensive line and unable to stop guys like Chris Jones and a team that was very good at sacking the quarterback this year. So
they were that was the deal. I think they were 3rd in hits and pressures or something, and or 3rd in sacks and 1st in hits and pressures or something like that. I mean, they were top 5 in 2 very they were 3 very, very important categories. Yeah. I mean, it's just it's like, you can.
Yeah, they were 2nd in sacks behind the Eagles. And so 55 during the regular season. That's a lot. It's a lot. So I think that we knew coming into this game it would be tough. But I had hope because of the way they played in Buffalo, and it just didn't turn out that way this time.
So I could have pulled up videos and showed you, I could have pissed and moaned about, there's Pirine in this circle. Here's the only thing I'm going to point out here. Okay. When you look at, here's the penalty on Joe Burrow, the intentional grounding. I think you had said maybe one of those other in this drive, maybe could have had a roughing the passer. This is my thing, Jason. When you're going to put this borderline call on the game, and I highlighted it, we're talking under a minute and a half in the 4th quarter of the AFC Championship game.
Right.
That's my issue with it. It's not so much like, And granted, there's never really a great time to call a penalty if it's borderline or iffy or what have you. But then you have that at a minute and a half. And then, of course, the Bengals 3rd and 16, they convert it. So really you go, okay, well, I mean, how much does that really matter? Well, I mean, who knows, right? I mean, they could have had a different game plan altogether instead of, being a 3rd and 7 instead of 3rd and 16. Who knows? Who knows what that those are the questions that are raised. And then, of course, you look at it here, Bengals end up punting. And then, on the ensuing punt return, you're talking about no calls in the block in the back type of stuff. And then, of course, you've got the 3rd and 4 run by Mahomes that ended up sealing everything there because he had 5 yards for the first down, the Osai penalty, which I think the Osai penalty was warranted. But, you look at that, you look at that play, there's 1 or 2 potential holds that were not called on that play either. And you just look at it, you're talking about that's the thing, 17 seconds left in the game, right? I mean, it's just, that's my issue with it. It's not so much like, hey, we're talking about it. It's like, man, it's at these critical junctures where you're not making calls, you're making certain calls, and it's not dictating the outcome directly, I guess, of the game, but it is influencing the game in a pretty significant way.
That's a good way to phrase it. It's not dictating the outcome, but it absolutely is influencing. And when you have 24 seconds on the clock, it's terrible. You don't want a play like or a flag to decide the outcome of the game. And like you said, Osai's the penalty on Osai, it was warranted. Mahomes was out of bounds. But there were some, like you said, the holding call. Trey Hendrickson was held. There are a couple no calls. I also want to mention that punt. Drew Chrisman wasn't great today. There were some bad punts. So the coverage on that punt, because it was a low line drive punt, was bad as well. I think it was a net 25-yard punt, which terrible. If it's a good punt, you think maybe they just go to overtime, and then we saw what happened last year in overtime.
Yep. That's a good point. And again, it points to the fact that that's not officiating. That's not great execution, right? So, and this right here, I mean, we can again piss and moan about the officiating, and there's a lot there that kind of you want to talk about. But I mean, you look at it, Chiefs had more first downs. They had more passing first downs, less rushing first downs, but more passing first downs, 17-11. They were better on third down, 7 of 14 instead of 6 of 14 by the Bengals. Both teams were 1 of 1 on fourth down. You look at it, they ran more plays. They had more total yards, 357 to 309. Bengals actually had 1 more drive, ironically, than the Chiefs, which is just funny. Chiefs had more yards per play, 5.4 more. I mean, you go down the line, it's just, hey, they just kind of, they beat them in almost every area. This again, though, look at this one, Jason.
Oh, yeah.
Penalties. 9 for 71 for the Bengals, one of the least penalized teams traditionally under Zach Taylor in the league. 9 for 71 somehow in the AFC Championship game, and only 4 for 55 for the Chiefs. So you look at that and you go, But again, 2 turnovers by the Bengals, 1 for the Chiefs. Right. And you look at time of possession, Chiefs had the ball for 5
more minutes.
Yeah. So again, we can bemoan the officiating all we want, and there are complaints there, but you look at it and you kind of say, hey, the Chiefs just did a little bit more in a lot of different areas that the Bengals just couldn't come back from, where you want to call that the emotion, the passion in the game, or what have you. You just kind of got to say, hey, this was one of those games that in this series is always dictated by a field goal, that just kind of the scale kind of slightly tipped to the Chiefs this time, and they took care of business.
Yep. And also, the Bengals have been one of the most sure tackling defenses all season long. I don't know if they were first or second maybe for having the least amount of missed tackles. And there were some big time missed tackles today. Pacheco completely ran over Pratt for an extra 10 yards and a first down. There were some bad missed tackles in this game. So it was execution for sure. But I do believe that some officiating had something to do with the loss. But in the end, the Bengals just didn't play as well as the Chiefs did.
Yeah, and I mean, God love him. I mean, he's one of my favorite players on this team, Mike Hilton.
Oh, absolutely.
And he that missed, the guy who's talking about Burrowhead and all that kind of stuff. And there was some rough patches from him early in this game.
Yep.
And he wasn't the only one. I don't want to single him out, but you get singled out a little bit when when you make those comments. But he ended up late in the game, ended up playing a lot better, as did a lot of players. I think the Bengals just were a little stunned in general by wow. I mean, the Chiefs just came out swinging, right? I mean, I don't know that they had thought that it was going to be. They knew what they were up against. I thought that they maybe were like, whoa, they really came out passionate about this thing, right?
Right.
And I mean, granted, there's blame to share in a lot of different directions, you know. But like you said, there were missed tackles, there was bad execution on the offensive line at times, and you know, again, the Chiefs just did a little bit more. They just did a little bit more in this one, and this is a game that I think a lot of people will say, hey, this is probably going to be a staple in the AFC playoffs. I know that doesn't maybe ring great right now with Bengals fans, but you know, this is probably going to be a staple game in the AFC playoffs for many, many years based on who their quarterbacks are, who their coaches are, and just how they construct their rosters. And it's probably going to be outcomes like this, where it's 3 points one way, 3 points the other way.
Yep. To be the best, you have to beat the best, and that's what the Bengals have to do. You know, yeah. I mean, it's frustrating. I kind of at a loss of words. It's frustrating. It was a frustrating game to watch. And there are some silver linings, like you said earlier. The fact that we went into halftime down one score seemed like a win to me because we were so outplayed in the first half. But they held them. Yeah, they held them to a couple field goals. You know, just one touchdown, a couple field goals. The defense, you know, had kind of a bend it but don't break mentality with some of the Kansas City drives where they held them to those field goals, and the Bengals were able to get on the board as well. So yeah, the fact that we went down just, you know, one touchdown was big, and then we came out and stopped them. I think the Chiefs maybe went 3 and out in the first drive in the second half. The Bengals tied things up at 13. So, you know, they clawed back into it. They did. And they almost pulled it out. It just wasn't quite enough. And I think a lot of it was the injuries on the offensive line. I think, you know, undisciplined play on defense. That's not very common it wasn't very common with this year's defense, Lou Anarumo's defense this year. Yeah, now it's just time to sign Burrow for $1 trillion and bring in a couple free agents, have a good draft, you know.
Well, the good news is that the bulk of the core guys are still going to be under contract on both sides of the ball. And a good portion of them will still be on rookie deals and that sort of thing as the Bengals try to extend them. Now, the other good news is that the Bengals have seemingly struck, I mean, really their only big swing and miss in free agency that was, you know, kind of one of their bigger signings was Trey Waynes, right? I mean, everybody else has been like, wow.
Yeah.
Right. Even Larry Ogunjobi, who's not with them, who was not with them this year. Last year, he was like, wow, what a pickup, right? So They seem to identify guys in free agency well, and they seem now also, Jason, to be able, you know, the 2019 class, maybe notwithstanding, they seem to be drafting and developing well. So I think there's a higher level of confidence to be like, hey, you know, if you do lose, unfortunately, I think he's a really good player, but if you do lose a Jermaine Pratt, if you do lose a Jesse Bates, if you do lose some of these guys, you kind of say, well, you know, either they've got somebody in the wings that they can develop pretty quickly, or they'll bring in a guy, free agency draft, that sort of thing, to maybe fill some of these gaps and start getting the thing back moving in the direction that everybody wants it to be.
Yeah, I totally agree. You know, I'd hate to lose Pratt. Pratt was maybe the most improved defensive player on the team from last year to this year. You hate to lose Bates, a guy that, you know, homegrown. Not from Cincinnati, but, you know, he's a homegrown guy, the guy that you draft, one of the best safeties in the league. They did draft Dax Hill this year. I have to assume that's because they think that Bates is going to be somewhere else next year, but who knows? But yeah, you know, they've done well in free agency. They've done well in the draft. I believe they'll continue to do so. Now it's sad that it's over. You know, that's the thing. I didn't want it to be over. I wanted one more game. So
yeah. And Brandon here is upset. Here we go. Off-season talk. Here we come. I mean, what do you want me? They're not playing in the Super Bowl. I can't preview the Super Bowl if they're not playing in it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I get you. We're all hurting with you, but I mean, you know, it is what it is. But hey, this has been good chatting with you. I usually do this solo, and it's boring as hell sometimes when I do it solo. And I think people probably get bored with me doing it alone. So it's good to kind of volley some ideas back at you. And obviously, like I said, kind of commiserate with everything going on tonight. But hell of a game, really. I mean, it really. I mean, I know it didn't go the way we want it. It came down to last possession. It came down to, Burrow and the offense had an opportunity to go ahead and, whether field goal, touchdown, whatever, to do that. They didn't. And whatever you want to call how things played out in those last two drives with the men in stripes, it played out a certain way, and Chiefs did the job that they needed to do. They played very well throughout the game, and both teams just kind of weathered a lot of big, kind of a slugfest kind of game.
Yeah.
And Chiefs just did, like I said, keep saying, they just did just a tiny bit more, and they came out on top 23-20. All these games are decided by field goals, and I'm sure this is going to be one of many other chapters to come.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is going to go into a book as just a classic game between the Bengals and Chiefs, just one of many that we're probably going to see moving forward, especially in situations like this when it means everything. So
it does. Jason, just so people can find your stuff and find you and all that stuff, where are you at on Twitter? I know you do some stuff on Cincy. You do the Tuesday Trenches, do you know?
Yeah, Tuesday Trenches every week. I'm going to do some more stuff. I did some stuff on how the Bengals signed some guys for less money than, that have worked out really well. I'm on Twitter. It's Jason RG83. So, but yeah, I'm a Cincy Jungle every Tuesday, and then I'll be back with you.
Yeah. Man, I just wasn't. I kind of was just hoping for the Cinderella story. Well, I don't know if it's Cinderella story this year. I think the redemption story is maybe more upright. I guess that was maybe what where I thought we were going to go, but unfortunately, the Bengals just come up just short against those Kansas City Chiefs, and we'll see what happens. Jason, thanks for all of your work, and we'll be working with you more here. Thanks for everybody we've got a ton of live viewers through a lot of different platforms. I'm sure a lot of them are satisfied Kansas City Chiefs fans as well, but probably mostly some sad Bengals fans. Thanks to all of you, and of course, you can get this show and all of the shows on the Cincy Jungle podcast channel through your favorite audio streamer, whether that's iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, all of the ones we are there. And beneath Jason there, by the Cincy Jungle icon, there is a show logo. If you like the YouTube channel, go ahead and click that, subscribe, click the bell to be notified when we go live, when new content is available. And then, of course, if you like the video stuff as well, you got to give a thumbs up on the Cincy Jungle Facebook page. We're there. Appreciate everybody. Hell of a season. We'll be back with all kinds of stuff. We're not taking really much of a break on this show or at cincyjungle.com, even though the Bengals are now planning to the offseason. We've got a lot to talk about. We'll be doing that. Jason, take care, bud. Thanks for coming on with me tonight.
Absolutely. Have a good night. Right. Keep your heads up.
Trying to.
Yeah.